So quick recap. We know that cells stay alive and reproduce are two things that all cells do. We know that cells have communication with each cell in the brain. It's used like an electrical current. Three things that all cells do is they have a cell membrane, they have cytoplasm, and they have DNA. Now remember, bacteria does not have a nucleus. They have DNA, but not a nucleus. So here it goes through the same information that single-celled organisms do not have membrane-bound organelles, whereas multicellular have membrane-bound organelles, which is what we're going to get to today. Cells have a structure and function, which we'll see again today. Single-celled organisms like bacteria, one of the largest groups of single-celled organisms on the planet. Here's an amoeba, an example. Multicellular organisms like plants and animals. Plants and animals differ because plants have a cell wall, they have a large vacuole, and they have these green little guys here called chloroplasts with chlorophyll in them. Animal cells don't have those things, but they do have small, sometimes non-existent vacuoles. So make sure that you don't mistaken that they don't have any. They can have, but usually they're very small and not anything near as significant as a plant cell. Cell wall, we talked about, rough and rigid, giving shape to the cell. Cell membrane allows things to move in and out of the cell, so does the cell wall. The phospholipid bilayer we'll talk about in cell transport. Cytoplasm is like a jelly filled inside that allows things to be suspended inside the cytoplasm, inside the cell. Okay, the nucleus is the brains of the operation, right? We just skipped right over that. Nucleus is the brains of the operation. It tells the cell what to do. Okay, now we're going to get to the structures. Energy processing organelles. So cells require continuous supply of energy to eliminate waste, communicate, do all the things that it does. Plants make food and organelles in their cytoplasm in chloroplasts, which are green. But they're green because they contain chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is a green pigment which makes the plants green. So you'll see this picture up here on the right. That is a side section cut in half of a chloroplast. So a chloroplast is a structure, and inside of it is the color green from chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is captured by the sunlight, which makes sugar for the plant for it to use for energy. We can't make our own energy, so only plants can do this because they have these chloroplasts. Animals have to consume their food from their environment. Now, all cells have to have energy, and in order to have energy, we have to have mitochondria. So mitochondria are always considered the powerhouse of the cell. So here's a little mitochondria up here in the corner, and this is where it releases energy, breaking down the food into carbon dioxide and water. Keep in mind that if we're talking about cells and we're trying to figure out what types of cells contain the most mitochondria, because inside each one of these cells is a mitochondria, maybe multiple of them. The cells that require energy, a lot of energy, are going to have a lot of mitochondria. The cells that don't need a lot of energy are going to have very few. So I'm hopeful that my heart probably has a lot of mitochondria because it's constantly working 24/7. I know that there are parts of my body maybe I don't use so much, like I don't wiggle my ears much, so I probably don't have a whole lot of mitochondria in my cells near my ears, right? So keep in mind you have more mitochondria in muscle cells because we use the muscles quite a bit. Okay. Manufacturing organelles. Proteins are part of cell membranes, and cell membrane, remember, is that covering that goes over the cell to keep all the stuff inside and allows things in and out. They take part in nearly every cell activity because they're transporting things in and out of the cell. Now, ribosomes make proteins for the cell. So ribosomes are not membrane-bound organelles. Some float free. We'll see them in the cytoplasm. And then some are attached to the endoplasmic reticulum. So if they are attached, they're called ribosomal endoplasmic reticulum, or RER. Ribosomes are made in the nucleolus and move out into the cytoplasm. The nucleolus is a smaller space within the nucleus in the center of the cell that contains that important part of DNA. And outside of that nucleolus is the nucleus. So there's multiple layers that protect the important DNA that cannot be destroyed. They get their directions from the nucleus, the DNA. Ribosomes do. That's where they start in the nucleus, right? Okay, continuing. The nucleus gives ribosomes directions on how, when, and what order to make specific proteins. They're made in the nucleus, right? In the nucleolus. So that's where they're getting their directions. That's their boss. Hey, what do you want me to do? Where am I going? What am I doing? And then processing, transporting, and storing organelles, you have endoplasmic reticulum. Remember, these proteins, these ribosomes, could be either attached to the ER here, like this, or they can have the ribosomes stuck to the outside. This has no ribosomes, this does. So this has ribosomes stuck to it, so it's rough ER, RER, or smooth ER, SER. So endoplasmic reticulum extend from the nucleus to the cell membrane. So you'll see the nucleus here, and then you'll see on the outside is that smooth ER. The ER has a series of folds. You'll see those folds right here, which maintain and process and move around inside the cell. They help materials move around. ER can take up a lot of room in the cell, so it does. If you look at an entire cell, let's go back if we can. A few clicks away. Hopefully we can get there. That's a little further than I was hoping. Okay, so here are your free-floating ribosomes, the little dots going on around here. Those are your free-floating ribosomes, right? Now here we see the nucleus, your nucleolus where the DNA is stored. Then here, right here, is your smooth ER, right? And out here is your rough ER, right? So this is going to be attached, the smooth is going to be attached right outside the nucleus, which is what we were just saying. Okay, let's cruise on back to where we were. Good. Now ER is either rough with ribosomes, rough with ribosomes, right? Or smooth, like smooth, no ribosomes. Okay. ER process other certain substances, cellular substances like lipids, which are fat, that store energy. The ribosomes attached to the rough ER, right here, make proteins that are moved out of the cell or used within the cell. So this can be transported in the cell or transported out. So usually those free-floating ones, you'll see them move closer to the cell membrane to be transported out for other purposes. Okay, a couple more things to talk about here. After proteins are made in a cell, they are transferred to another type of organelle in the cell called the Golgi body. Here's the Golgi body. Always think of it like flattened pancakes. Cell membranes flatten. See how flat they are? Now they can make little vesicles that pop off of them. Those vesicles are like cars that transport things, like if you want to think of UPS or something like that. So the Golgi's job is to sort the proteins, right? And substances and package them into these vesicles, and then the vesicles deliver them around the cell. They carry the cellular substances to the membrane. The substance is then released outside the cell. This membrane is the cell membrane on the outside, right? So here's our plant cell. You're going to see that they're transported out here around the membrane. And then remember the plant has that cell wall. Vesicles are temporary storage materials in plants and vesicles. Sorry, vacuoles are temporary storage places. Now vacuoles are going to be larger than they in plants than they are in animal cells, and sometimes animal cells they don't have them. So remember that when you're being asked about the vacuole, it's actually talking about being incredibly large in a plant. It takes up quite a bit of space. Be sure to remember that so you don't. Some of the answers on our quiz, it was a little iffy whether you understood that it takes up a majority of the space. Okay, now on this page, we're going to talk about recycling. Now, you're always going to have things breaking down or broken or dead or whatever within a cell. So you have to have something that's going to help clean up the place. So you have lysosomes. Lysosomes contain digestive enzymes that help break down molecules and take up waste and everything else and make it disappear. So keep the place clean like the janitor, right? And the lysosome membrane is to prevent digestive chemicals from, they have like a membrane around them just like the nucleus does and just like the cell does. They have an extra layer around them to prevent that enzyme that helps digest all these things that need to be destroyed from leaking out. And that way it doesn't kill the cell. You don't want that to happen. Okay, so here is a video here you guys probably need to watch to maybe go through this. It kind of goes through the process. And here's an example of the cell activity that I did, which is in one of your options for an assignment. And this should be where we stop.